And there it is.
Is that why we still have different Jesus groups today?
No, that's a lot of things. That's a lot of things. Through this woman, the Samaritan men and villagers come to Jesus. They ask him to stick around. He does for 2 days. And they come to believe that Jesus is the Savior of the world. This is how John has constructed the story. Consider a few pieces of cultural information. Again, I want you to notice in verse 27 that when they returned, the disciples marveled that Jesus was talking with a woman. It has nothing to do with what kind of woman she was or who she was, but rather they are dumbfounded that in public he is talking to a woman. That behavior is scandalous and shameful. Another thing to notice in verse 42, they said to the woman, it is no longer because of your words, dietein sein lalian, that we believe. For we have heard for ourselves and we know that this is indeed the Savior of the world. That phrase, because of your words, interests scholars. Sandra M. Schneiders, a feminist scholar, explains that this relates to something that Johannine Jesus later says in chapter 17 in the Last Supper discourse. John 17:20, Jesus said, I do not pray for these only, presumably his male disciples, but also for those who believe into me dia tu logu auton, through their word. Sounds like the same thing. This would be the Johannine Jesus speaking presumably to his all-male disciples gathered around him. Okay, what many scholars like feminist Sandra Schneiders do is believe that biblical authors are consistent and that whenever they use phrases, they use them deliberately and intentionally. So Schneiders, a feminist, concludes that the unnamed Samaritan woman is being appointed by Jesus for ministry. Okay. But what's the problem with Schneider's conclusion? Is that what Jesus did in the story? Did Jesus command her, go evangelize the whole village for me? No. Did he say that?
To go where she went is actually shameful.
That's true, but that's secondary. Here's the key thing. What did Jesus command her to do?
To go back to her husband. And
call your husband. So Jesus, he didn't command her husband to go and minister to everybody in the town and get them to come to him. What he did was command her to do something else. Go call your husband, and she was disobedient. She never did call her husband. So it's difficult to sustain. It's understandable to see what Schneiders wants to do. She wants to help the empowerment of women, and we appreciate her, but it's difficult to sustain her understanding. She's letting her agenda read things into the text that are not there. Yes, sir.
Back to the husbands. Which husband? The one she currently has? Or
well, she didn't do it. He commanded her to do it. She didn't do it.
Oh, all right, but which one did he intend for her to tell?
He told her. He said that she was telling the truth. But the thing is, what I'm trying to show you, this is another thing about disobedience and honor. This is the situation, is that if, from the perspective of this scholar, Schneiders, she's very, I don't want to say desperate, but she's trying to get Jesus to deliver a feminist message. And that's not really what the story is about. What the story is about is the inclusion of, it's a theologically ingenious theological story to explain what has already happened, which is Samaritans have entered the Johannine Jesus group. And this woman represents that people. Okay? So to try to construe her into this person who Jesus is empowering as an evangelist, that's all good that she does what she does, and it's definitely praiseworthy, but that's not what Jesus commanded her to do in the story. So it doesn't work, it doesn't hold up. Schneider's understanding doesn't hold up. Now, for Schneider, I have to say, there is indeed a woman commissioned in the gospel we call John, who becomes an apostle to the apostles. That is Mary, I should say apostle to the disciples, because they're not really apostles in John, but she is Mary Magdalene. That's very clear. Later on, we're going to see that.
This makes more sense to me.
Right, but not the Samaritan woman. But not the Samaritan woman. That's so. See, Schneider's what I'm trying to show you here is that even when people have good intentions, see, it distorts. The tendency is to distort the text and to give it to reading what you want it to read. Do you understand?
There's only, if I'm understanding the overall.
Yeah.
There's no need to do that because developmentally it could get there.
You're on target, Eric, because there is no need. But see, if you get the good news, if you go back to the culture, you got to treat the in and inspiration seriously. Instead of all this gobbledygook made up. All these mental gymnastics. Schneider's interpretation is just not appropriate. I'm sorry. Good intentions notwithstanding. So moving along, the better interpretation of this passage, which context group scholar Jerome Neyrey proposes, makes more sense about what's going on in John chapter 4. In the Middle East, ancient and modern, there is a strict separation between public space and private space. Last time we were together, last week, how did we identify the space of the village well? Is it private or public?
It's public. It is a public place, but now it's private. Jesus made it private space.
It depends. It depends. On the face of it, it appears to be a public space.
Yeah.
But deciding that is not so simple, is it?
No.
We cannot only look at the place, but also we must explore, folks, what is going on within the place. Imagine two related people in the Middle East, people of the same family, a man and a woman at a well alone. What kind of space is it? Well, you have to ask, like, what might they be talking about, these two related people? If they're related, they might be talking about family matters, family problems, family concerns. Is that a plausible scenario? Sure. So the topic of discussion, folks, actually determines whether the place is public or private space. Now you tell me, what were they talking about? Were they talking about private matters, family matters, or were they talking about public matters? Private. When they start talking about the marriages, that's in-house, that's private. What does that imply about the woman? What has she now become to Jesus? If there's no one else there and they are speaking about intimate family matters, then it could be private space. When Jesus comments about the woman's sex life, ask yourself, should a man and a woman be talking about such things in public? On the face of it, this looks very shameful, scandalous. Recall that when the disciples come back, they don't have a clue as to what's going on, what was being said, or why Jesus was talking with this woman. But when the Johannine Jesus raises this topic, he's changing the space from public into private with the fourth statements. What he is therefore doing by means of the dialogue with the woman is bringing her into his kinship group, because only kin can talk about these matters. Jesus accomplishes this by shifting the topic from water into this direction, marriage. Look again at the pattern of 7 in this exchange between the Johannine Jesus and the Samaritan woman. What would be the main point again? Husbands is the main thing. Hey, thanks for watching. Just continue the playlist for the next part of the study. If you have further questions, this is good. They will get addressed, so keep watching. If you found value, please subscribe, like, and share. As always, questions, comments, and criticisms are most welcome. God bless you.